Hi, I'm Rob, and this is my broken Mr. Buddy heater. Hopefully we can fix it in today's video. The heater started acting up about a week ago, and what it did at first was just sort of shut off for no reason while it was running. And then slowly over the last week or so, it was getting harder and harder to light until yesterday. I was trying to light it, and the pilot flame was coming out kind of orange and yellow instead of a nice steady blue, and the heater wouldn't really light. So I think something is jammed in there. In fact, I'm almost positive there's something in there because I've actually already started kind of looking at this. You've kind of caught me mid-repair. As you may be able to tell, I've already removed the protective grate from the front. And what I noticed was down here where the pilot light is, there were some dried leaves and things kind of in there. So I think some junk has gotten into the pilot light burner and is causing some issues. So I think we're going to have to take this apart and try and fish out whatever the obstruction is. Now it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, this video is offered up just for entertainment purposes. I'm not a professional heater repair technician, so I'm just a guy in my basement trying to fix my heater, and I've got the camera on to show you what I'm doing. If you're having trouble with your heater, I recommend you talk to a professional before you take yours apart. Now that that's out of the way, let's keep going with the repair. Now the first thing I did was to try and clean out the pilot light burner with a Q-tip moistened with some isopropyl alcohol. I got it fished down in there and kind of swirled it around to get some of the junk out. But as you can see from this Q-tip that I also used to try and clean out the pilot light burner, I got some cotton fibers down in there, and I think that may be actually making the problem worse. So in other words, I think using the Q-tip to try and clean this out was a bad idea and made the problem worse rather than better. So I've obviously already taken the safety grate off, and that just kind of clips into the sheet metal. You just need to use a little force to kind of pop it out of its mount. So the next thing I want to do is get the propane cylinder out of the way so that we don't have any gas leaks other than what might be in the system kind of trapped in there. Now that the propane cylinder is removed, I want to purge the heater of any remaining gas that might be in the system. So to do that, I'm just going to use the control and attempt to try and light the pilot light until I no longer hear fuel coming through the system. As you can see there, I've got some fuel burning off with the pilot light, and I'm going to let that burn off until it completely dissipates. I'm going to start off with removing the 3 screws on each side of the heater. There's one up here sort of behind the handle, and then there's 2 down below in recesses. I'm going to also pull off the control knob by pulling straight up on it. Okay, so with those screws out of the way, I can just pop the back off and have a look inside. Next, I'm going to tip the heater over, and I'm going to take this bottom plate out of here. Here's a look inside the heater, and specifically right here, this is the pilot light burner assembly. And this here is the pilot light burner itself. I'm going to use an 11mm wrench on this fitting, and I'm going to use a 12mm wrench on this one. You should be able to just crack that loose. Now I'll get this tube out of the way here. I think I want to remove the pilot assembly just so I can get a better look at the burner. So in order to do that, I'm going to first remove this wire by disconnecting it up here. The next thing I want to do is remove this screw right here. Once that's out of the way, the pilot assembly will slide off of that tab, and now I can kind of work it up here and have a look at it, even though this tube is still connected. Now that I've got the burner freed up so that I can kind of look at it and inspect it, I noticed when looking through this sort of vent hole, I noticed a white object, and I believe that to be a big chunk of that Q-tip I was mentioning before that I had used to try and clean this out. So between using this paper clip and some small needle nose pliers that I have, I'm going to try and fish that Q-tip out of there. Okay, so that was quite a chunk of that Q-tip that got left behind. No wonder this thing wasn't working. Now that the Q-tip is out of the way, I want to try and clean the rest of this thing and make sure there's no other debris in there. Now if we take a look down inside the burner, you can see there is a much smaller passageway in here. And I'm going to try and chase that out with this copper wire now to make sure there's no other debris in there causing an issue. And I'm going to flip the burner over and do the same thing from this side and make sure I can get this copper wire to pass through. You're probably not going to be able to see this through the camera, but I can see daylight now through this pinhole, so I think we've got all the obstructions out of here. I'm going to reassemble everything now and we'll try it out and see. I'm not sure if you can hear this, but as I depress down on the igniter knob, the gas sounds like it's flowing nice and even now. Before, it was kind of making a gurgling noise and almost like a squeaking noise. But let's actually push down on this and see if it'll light. Oh wow, and it lit right away. You can see we've got a nice steady blue flame. And if I let go of it, it stays lit. So now if we send this over to low, the heater should light. I turned off the light so you can see the burner on the heater. I just turned it up to high, and you should be able to see it glowing orange now. And just to try this one more time, we'll go over to the pilot light, push down, it ignites right away. When I let go, the light stays on. If I send this over to high, the heater lights right up and starts to heat up. So I think we're good to go. The last thing I need to do is install the protective grate. So I've got it in the bottom holes. I'll just pivot it up and snap it back into place on the top. Now one thing I've learned about the Buddy heater through this process and doing some research on what to do to fix this is that if these are going to be stored for a while, it's a good idea to remove the gas cylinder and then burn off any remaining gas that's in the system. That prevents any of the oils that come out of the propane gas from settling in the system and clogging up things like the pilot light burner. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my Buddy heater repair. Thanks for watching.